What is it you wish to discuss this day?
Bashar,
Yes.
I recently discovered the idea known as tachyon.
Yes.
Can you give us from your perspective, a breaking down of the different energies? From the paradigm that I've been looking at has the tachyon at the 7th level, and then it breaks it down into different segments from there, and with the 8th being sort of an overall void, the idea of being out of the whole idea. Is there some kind of paradigm that you can give us in the sense of energy from your perspective and the way it...
Yes.
Okay.
This has, again, directly to do with the relationship between the etheric level and what you call your physical material level. This relationship, again, is a matter of degree, a matter of frequency, but it is all based on the concept of the prime radiant. You have heard to discuss the concept of the prime radiant?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that.
All right. Prime radiant is the understanding that everything, to use the terminology now that you understand in your language, particle, you understand, subatomic particle. Yes, you understand this term?
Yes,
Yes, we do.
Is, of course, not really a particle as you think of these things, and even your scientists know that. But to use the term just to illustrate the point, let us just speak of a prime particle, a subatomic particle, out of which everything is made in physical material reality. You follow me so far?
Yes.
The idea of the prime radiant is that everything you understand to be an infinite number of particles is actually the same one particle interacting with itself in the following way. Just imagine now that you have one particle. Just imagine this in your mind's eye, just for the purposes of illustrating the point, even though we understand this is not absolutely literally representative of the reality. Just now imagine one particle, one little tiny point dot, if you wish. And imagine that this particle can move at infinite speed, infinite speed. Now, what this would mean is that this particle, in being able to move at infinite speed, would be everywhere at once. It would not be perceived as moving, it would just be perceived as being everywhere. But let us start with the idea that this particle really has no substance in your terminology, is not perceivable per se, and can only be perceived by you in your physical reality when it reinforces itself by overlapping itself in the path that it takes. In moving at infinite speed and tracing a line, a particular geometric pattern over and over and over and over again with slight variations, here and there it will cross itself. And as it crosses itself over and over again, it will reinforce itself and thus appear to be more and more and more solid. The less it crosses itself, the less solid it will appear. This gives rise to the idea of the very densest physical reality, where the particle crosses itself as many times as it possibly can, to the higher, more rarefied etheric realms, where it does not cross its own path that many times, to the void in space, where it contains what you call virtual particles, which simply come into existence briefly and flicker out. But you know that the void is contained, is full of many, many different potential particles, potential reality, potential dimensionalities, and so forth, and then on up the scale. The idea simply is that this particle, in moving at infinite speed and being everywhere at once, means it is interacting with itself. What you perceive to be this particle here and that particle there, held together by an apparent force, be it the strong force, or the electric force, or gravity, or whatever you wish to call it, it is not really being held together by a force. It is not really being attracted to anything. Gravitation, in that sense, is not an attractive force. There really are no forces, per se, as your society thinks of them. As such, the idea is that when this particle is moving at infinite speed, being everywhere at once, it appears next to itself a number of times, and you think, from your perspective, that this is one particle, that is another particle, but it is the same particle interacting with itself, in a sense. And the force that apparently draws them together is simply the geometry of the path that it is taking, in that this particle here and this particle there are simply representative of where the lines of that path cross each other very close to each other. And thus there is no other place that those particles can be at that moment but next to each other. But it is because of the description of the geometry of the path they are taking, not because there is actually a force interacting between them. You follow me so far? Now, the concept again of how this applies to tachyon energy, or what your society has labeled tachyons, is that simply in the entire array of the geometric pattern that this one particle is taking, you have overlaps and arrays of different kinds of radiating patterns, side effects. If you were to imagine a very complicated geometric pattern, you would see that there are many places where the lines cross over and over and over and over and over again, and where they cross, as if you were to have, let's say, a spiral going this way and a spiral going that way, you would see certain points where the lines cross, and it would appear to your eye that there was a line being described by where those points cross. But it would be, in your terms, an illusion, you understand? There would not really be a line there, but where the points cross, in the succession in which they cross, would give the apparency of the illusion of a path. One of those paths would be called the speed of light. One of those paths would be called the tachyon existence, the tachyon dimension, and all other dimensions and all other levels therein, all within the infinite speed of the prime radiant, the prime particle. So it is simply a matter of degree, and the tachyons represent the etheric manifestations, the almost massless manifestations, on the other side of what you call the speed of light, which is simply one of those lines describing the border of your particular physiological universe, the tachyon being the material of the etheric universe, so to speak, not having been crystallized, not being overlapping enough in the geometric pattern to be physicalized per se, but forming nonetheless the underlying template for physical reality. And where those lines are crossed sufficiently, thus going from the tachyon level to the physical level, what you call physical matter, from etheric matter, and all the other higher forms of matter of the prime radiant, expressions of the prime radiant, of light, of energy, and so on and so forth. So all those ideas, light and energy and matter and tachyons and the etheric reality, are all different forms, different expressions of the one prime radiant, just by virtue of the fact of how many times it interacts or reflects with itself. Does that make some sense to you?
Yeah, I understand the prime radiant now.
All right. Therefore, with regard to the way in which the tachyon concept is being utilized in your society at this time, in that we take your meaning of certain kinds of products and so on and so forth that are made to have associations with the concept of tachyon, understand that what is simply being done is that your consciousness is being directed to the underlying template, which is representative of the tachyon level of the prime radiant. It isn't that that material is actually infused per se with tachyons, but that there is a level within all material that is the tachyon level. And when you attune your vibrational thoughts to that level, then you can extract a different kind of energy, a different kind of relationship, a different kind of focus from that layer, that tachyon layer, which exists within all material objects. Because it is more like the template level of the material object that you are holding in your hand, and it is simply the idea of focusing on that level that makes it have the effect that it has, because you then are changing your frequency to match it. You follow along?
Oh, cool.
Does this make some sense to you?
And is there different material substances that can, what I say,
represent the level, or perhaps allow the concept to be transmitted more easily to your level? Yes,
right,
there are.
transduce.
Yes, there are. There are perhaps certain kinds of variations of metals. One of the ones that actually has one of the highest degrees of transferring tachyon energy, as surprising as this may seem, would be the substance called amber. For understand that trees are very, very good at transforming tachyon energy into physical matter. Back and forth, they are transmuters of light and many different high levels of energy. So, their sap, which solidified into what you now recognize as amber, contains a matrix that is particularly receptive to the transformative use of etheric tachyon energies into physical materiality reception. You understand? So amber is one of the strongest transmuters of tachyon energy into physical energy and vice versa.
And the Japanese are using a technology in which they use silicon beads.
Yes, silicon is another.
Yeah.
The idea of your quartz crystals are also very good transmuters of tachyon energy. All right?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.